All right. So today we're going to be talking about books. Okay. I've got a whole bunch of books we're going to be reviewing today and really this week. If you follow the blog as well, you have noticed that I talked about a couple of books on Monday when I announced Continuing Financial Education Week. I talked about this sweet book from Chirag Shah and Jayanth Sridhar. And I hope I'm pronouncing those names right. This is a really great book. See Monday's blog post for more information. They call it Financial Freedom RX. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm holding it up here for the camera. They call it The Physician's Guide to Achieving Financial Independence. They got Mel Lindauer of the Bogleheads to write the foreword. It's a very Boglehead-centric book, but directed at physicians. So it goes into lots of details about, asset location and tax efficiency and building a portfolio and those sorts of things, but also touches on lots of physician-specific financial planning topics. So if you've enjoyed my books and kind of want to read another book, kind of covers similar ground, but from different points of view, this is a great option. Another book that I really enjoyed this year and that I'm implementing with my kids is called The Family Board Meeting. And this is a pretty sweet book. This is by, you'd think the author would put the name on the front of the cover. That's it, really interesting. The name is not on the front cover.
Jim Shield.
Jim Shield, that's what it is. Yeah. Thank you, Cindy. It's called The Family Board Meeting. And it's super short, right? You read this thing in an hour. But the concept behind a family board meeting is that your family is what's most important. And a lot of us that are busy entrepreneurs, busy doctors, whatever, tend to put our families on the back burner. So this is a way to connect with your kids. Basically, the idea is once a quarter, you have a board meeting with each kid. And by board meeting, I'm not talking about sitting down and having a boring meeting. I'm talking about like going surfing, right? Something cool that you call a board meeting. So the rules are it's got to be at least 4 hours. Nobody can have their phone on, or there can't be any electronics during the meeting. The kid gets to choose the activity, and there has to be a very short reflection period at the end. And the author has seen dramatic changes in himself as well as other people he's taught this concept to, and really made a connection with his kids that he didn't have before. I talked about that as well in Monday's blog post. Tuesday's blog post was all about this book. This is my favorite book of the year. It's called The Hands-Off Investor. It's by Brian Burke. He's the CEO of Praxis Capital. A lot of these books tend to be advertisements for a given firm. This one's not. This one's really a step-by-step guide to passive investing, whether we're talking about syndications or funds. If you are interested in those, if you are like, I don't know how to evaluate a syndication, I don't know which ones are good, which ones are bad, I don't know which sponsors to trust, this is your book. It's great. It's called The Hands-Off Investor. It's got soup to nuts information about syndications, about funds, how to evaluate the sponsor, how to evaluate the deal, how to evaluate the investment structure. Great book. So check that out if you're interested. We'll, of course, have links to all these books in the show notes that you can go to and just with one click, go to them on Amazon if you're interested in purchasing them. Okay, I got a whole stack of books here that people have sent me this year, right? I mean, look at this stack. It's got to be 15 books. People send me these books wanting me to review them on the blog, right? Because we have a big audience, or review them on the podcast. And let's be honest, if I started doing more book reviews on the blog or on the podcast, I'd get twice as many as these books. And that's all we'd ever talk about. It'd be a book review podcast. So we're not going to do that. I wedged them all into today's podcast. So we're going to talk briefly about each of these books. If one of them rings a bell for you, sounds like something you would be interested in, then, again, the links will be in the show notes. You can buy it. You can, some of them maybe will be already available in your library and you can borrow them. But for the most part, if you're interested in these books, you're probably going to have to buy them. Thank you for going through our affiliate links in the show notes. That does help support the show. All right, the first book I want to talk about, I think I mentioned a few months ago when we had Jim Lang on the podcast. He wrote this book. He's coming to speak at WCICon 22. He's one of our keynote speakers. I'm not sure we've decided which book we're giving away yet. It may be his Retire Secure book, but this book is Beating the New Death Tax. And so it's all about the Secure Act, how to get around it, etc. He was actually giving this book away when he was on the podcast. But you can buy it at Amazon. It's a great book. It talks about strategies to protect your family from recent changes. Lang's firm is really big on both estate planning as well as tax reduction, retirement accounts, that sort of thing. And so this book gets pretty into depth into those sorts of subjects. Roth conversions. If you're thinking about Roth conversions, great book to read about that. As well as how to deal with required minimum distributions, those kinds of problems. I get a lot of flack from people saying, you only talk to young dogs. There's nothing in there for old dogs thinking about retiring or who are already retired. Well, this is good for those kind of dogs. Okay. And my next book is actually another book James Lang and his folks sent me called Retire Secure for Professors. And those of you watching this on YouTube, I don't know what happened between the time the first book was published here and the second book was published, but James Lang's hair went from black to gray between these two. I think he just used an updated picture in this one, but I've got the same problem going with my hair. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Two books came out the same year with very different pictures on the cover. But this one's obviously aimed at professors. If you're a professor, and we have a few of you that follow the White Coat Investor, this is information that is very specific to you if you're interested in that. Retire Secure is a great book. That's kind of the general one. And then it's kind of a series. He's got them for various different professions. There isn't one for docs, but he does have one for professors. So Retire Secure for Professors by James Lang. Our next book is called Building an Elite Organization. And this one is Don Wenner's book. I think I mentioned this on the podcast when I had Don on. Don is the founder and CEO of DLP Capital. And so this book talks about how we scale DLP Capital. So if you're an entrepreneur, this book's for you, especially if you're at the stage kind of where White Coat Investor is at, where you're trying to scale your business, you're hiring more people, you're trying to put systems in place, you're trying to decide, what your company culture is going to be. This is really a very practical step-by-step guide to doing that. Building an Elite Organization by Don Wenner. All right. Here is a book called Stay in Medicine, subtitled How Physicians Can Move Past Burnout and Regain Control. This one is by Janet Cruz, MD, and Lee M.J. Elias. And I like this book. It talks about we can save more lives if we save each other. And burnout is seriously your biggest financial risk. Just like being disabled, you can no longer turn your time into money at a high rate as doctors can do. If you become burnt out, you can't do that either. In fact, even if you're only a little burnt out and have to cut back on your hours, that has financial implications on your life. So I think it's important for anybody to do some burnout prevention kind of reading. Or if you're already at that stage, like up to 50% of doctors, to get started as soon as possible on treatment. But there's lots of great practical tips in here. There's a whole chapter on reducing time killers, things like huddling daily with your team, making sure you take time for training, using your leadership training, making a contingency plan for unexpected events. So there's lots of really practical things here, both for running your practice as well as dealing with your own personal burnout to help you to stay in medicine. It seems like the trend a lot of times on these physician financial blogs and podcasts is get out of medicine as soon as you can. Well, that's not my goal. I want some doctors to be there to take care of me. And the truth is, despite everything you hear about FIRE and early retirement among docs, half of docs are working after age 65, and not all because they have to. Medicine's still a great profession, and this can help you stay in medicine. So check out that book, Stay in Medicine. Janet Cruz, MD, is the lead author on that one. All right, here's another one, The EXITpreneur's Playbook. Okay, this is one that was given to me at FinCon by Joe Valley, the author of the book. If you have a business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're thinking about selling it and you're not sure how much it's worth, this is particularly useful for online entrepreneurs, but it's basically how to get out of your business. And don't worry, I'm not reading it because I'm closing up WCI this year or something like that. But if you are in that situation and interested in more information about how to sell your business, how to value your business, what it's worth, etc., it's called The EXITpreneur's Playbook by Joe Valley. Okay, let's do this one next. 2 Funds for Life. This is a partner of Paul Merriman's, Chris Peterson, who talks about two funds for life, basically creating a two-fund portfolio. And you might be surprised by what the two funds are in the book, but basically it's a target retirement fund plus a small value fund. Paul and Chris are huge believers in factor investing. We're talking about small tilts, value tilts, etc. But they also like the simplicity and benefits and automatic rebalancing of a target retirement fund. So how do you get both of those? Well, you add a small value fund to a target retirement fund. And this book goes through in detail, incredible detail, what that would look like in the past with back tests, all kinds of great graphs. And you can see some of these if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are interested in that concept, this is a great book. I really liked that they included a chapter called Contrarian Views, A Dose of Humility. Basically, what could go wrong with this idea? And I think that's useful to have in a book. So check that out. It's Chris Peterson, Pedersen, Two Funds for Life. All right, this one was sent to me by Dr. David Phelps. He is a dentist. I don't know if you know him. He's been around in this space for a long, long time. He's actually pulled himself out of his own practice twice, once before a divorce and once after a divorce, and pretty unique methods to do it. He basically hires associates to work in the practice, and then he takes the cash flow from the practice and buys real estate. And so he basically freed himself from his practice, and he talks about that. This book, of course, he's really big on freedom, kind of patriotic themes. He's down in Texas, no surprise. This one's called Own Your Freedom, Sustainable Wealth for a Volatile World. He did it with a fellow by the name of Dan S. Kennedy. This is more, what do you want out of life? How can you get yourself free of your practice, of your life, and be able to live your life like you want, but with kind of a real estate tilt. So if you're a fan of real estate, you want to learn more about real estate, you want to use real estate to get your freedom, this is a pretty great book to do that, written by a dentist. Own Your Freedom by David Phelps, DDS. Okay, here is a kind of a niche book that was sent to me. This is by Nathan Gartland, PharmD, and it's called PharmD to MD. Now, I don't know how many PharmDs are going to medical school, but if you are a PharmD and thinking about medical school, in medical school, already applying to medical school, this book is for you. It says it's called A Complete Guide to Getting into Medical School, and written from the perspective of a pharmacist now going back to medical school. So if that's your niche, I'm sure this is the only book in it. So get this book, PharmD to MD, Nathan Gartland. Again, links will be in the show notes. This one is a little bit of a lighter book. You can see this if you're watching this on YouTube. It's called You What? Humorous Stories, Cautionary Tales, and Unexpected Insights About a Career in Medicine. This is by John Chase, MD. He is a retired orthopedic surgeon. It's really a great book about life as a doctor, your practice, just pulling all the goodness out of a career in medicine that you possibly can. I like this cartoon you can see if you're watching this on YouTube. He's got these sprinkled throughout the book. This one's from the chapter, Making Decisions with Patients. Should I operate, not operate, scope, do a total knee? Is the patient crazy, etc.? And it's just really a fun book to read. This isn't maybe for the brand new grad. It's probably somebody mid-career or late career wanting to reflect a little bit more on their career and how to really get all the juice out of it that you're interested in. Maybe not a completely financial book, but again, you might as well enjoy your career. It's not just the way to pay for your retirement. It's also what you're doing with your life. So that's called You What? From John Chase, MD. All right. I got another one sent in by an advisor that's been following me for a long time, Glenn Frank. This one's called Your Encore, a retirement planning guide, how to balance time, money, and joy. And this is a book that also has a website, timemoneyandjoy.com. But this is for not young docs. This one is for docs on the verge of retirement or who are already retired. And it's all about your encore. Right? What's an encore? If you're at a performance, it's what they do after the curtain drops, after, you clap for them, then they do something more. Well, that's what retirement is. It's your encore. And so this helps you to find the time, the money, and the joy to do whatever it is that you most want to do in retirement. And this is a difficult transition for a lot of docs. For a lot of docs, it's very difficult to walk away from a practice into something else. And we all have colleagues that we know of that really didn't have much of a life after they left medicine, whether it is measured in terms of years or in joy that they take from it. So part of retirement planning is more than just financial. It's planning what you're going to be doing and how you're going to take joy from that, and how all of us type A people that ended up in medicine can get just as much fulfillment after our careers as we did during our careers. That's called Your Encore. It's by Glenn Frank. Link will be in the show notes. And the final book I wanted to review today on the podcast is this one called Your Total Wealth, The Heart and Soul of Financial Literacy. And this one is by Lyle Sussman, PhD, and David Dubovsky, PhD, CFA. David sent me a note with it when he sent it here. I can barely read it. He has handwriting like a doctor's. We've had many medical students in our classes. We know they need this and will love this book. And I think that's true. It is more of a basics of personal finance book. This is not the book you read after you've read 35 other financial books. It is a great book, though, if you are just kind of getting into finance and want to learn the basics from a great perspective. It goes through a lot of important information. Don't get me wrong. It even covers things like options, calls, puts, derivatives, asset allocation, those sorts of things. But it takes it all from a relatively basic perspective and explains it from the very beginning. So they don't assume you know anything when you pick up this book and explain it all. It's called Your Total Wealth, The Heart and Soul of Financial Literacy by Sussman and Dubovsky. Check that out. It's a great book. Hope you enjoy it. All right, enough books. I mean, that is a stack of books I got this year. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 books we just reviewed. You only got to read one for your continuing financial education. So pick the one that is most applicable to you. Read a book this year and make sure you spend a little bit of time on your finances. You can't put it all on medicine or all on whatever your profession is and expect to be financially successful. You have to do some continuing financial education.
My dad, your host, Dr. Dolly, is a practicing emergency physician, blogger, author, and podcaster. He is not a licensed accountant, attorney, or financial advisor, so this podcast is for your entertainment and information only and should not be considered official, personalized financial advice.